Clara had always lived a quiet, unassuming life in the small frontier town of Cedar Creek. The town was modest, with dusty streets, wooden storefronts, and a few scattered cabins. Clara ran her late father's general store, a humble place filled with jars of preserves, sacks of flour, and the faint smell of pine from the shelves. She worked diligently, but often felt invisible, overlooked by townsfolk who barely noticed her presence beyond polite nods. She had grown accustomed to the solitude, finding comfort in routine and the familiar rhythm of her work. Yet beneath her calm exterior, there was a deep longing to be seen, to be valued for something more than mere utility. She often muttered to herself in quiet moments, "I'm not lovely," a whisper of self-doubt that revealed how harshly she judged her own appearance and worth. Clara didn't expect anyone to hear her, and certainly didn't expect anyone to care. Then, one bright afternoon, the sound of hooves clattering against the wooden boardwalk signaled the arrival of a stranger. Luke, a rugged cowboy with sun-kissed skin, weathered jeans, and a confident air, rode into town without fanfare. He wasn't looking for attention or a particular destination, but something about the town's simplicity drew him in. As he tied his horse and wandered toward the general store, he noticed Clara arranging jars on the shelves. There was an effortless focus in the way she worked, a quiet determination that caught his eye. She seemed unaware of his presence, yet Luke felt an unusual pull-in, unspoken curiosity. When Clara murmured, almost shyly, "I'm not lovely," Luke couldn't help but smirk. Most people would have brushed her off or been embarrassed by the admission, but he found himself intrigued instead. "Honest is what I crave," he replied with a soft confidence, letting her know that beauty and charm were irrelevant to him. He valued authenticity above all else. That brief exchange, simple yet profound, sparked a connection neither fully understood at the moment. It was a quiet recognition of shared honesty, a spark of interest that would set the stage for something deeper. In that instant, the seed of trust and curiosity was planted, hinting at a bond that could grow into love, rooted not in appearances, but in the raw honesty that defined both their characters. After their first brief encounter in the general store, Clara couldn't stop thinking about the rugged cowboy who had so effortlessly acknowledged her honesty. Luke, meanwhile, found himself drawn to her quiet strength and the way she seemed so grounded in a world that often valued only appearances. Over the next few days, he began finding reasons to linger in Cedar Creek, always circling back to the general store. Sometimes it was to help with heavy deliveries, other times simply to chat while Clara restocked shelves. Their conversations started cautiously, with small talk about the weather, town happenings, or the occasional shipment of goods. Yet beneath the mundane topics, a subtle connection was forming, a rhythm of companionship that neither of them had anticipated. Clara began to feel something she had rarely experienced, a sense of being truly seen. Luke didn't ask about her appearance, nor did he comment on what she lacked in beauty or charm. Instead, he asked questions about her thoughts, her routines, and even her dreams. At first, Clara found it slightly disarming, unsure if she deserved such attention. She had grown so accustomed to being overlooked that someone showing genuine interest felt both thrilling and intimidating. Yet Luke's presence was comforting rather than overwhelming. He had a way of teasing her gently, making her laugh at herself, and encouraging her to share opinions she often kept hidden. For Luke, Clara's quiet confidence and resilience were magnetic. She had a way of noticing small details, of offering insight without being loud or boastful. Each day he spent in her company revealed layers to her personality that fascinated him: the subtle wit in her smile, the thoughtful way she arranged the store, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke about something she cared for. Slowly, what had begun as casual visits turned into a routine both looked forward to. By the end of the week, a tentative friendship had blossomed, built on mutual respect and genuine curiosity. Clara felt lighter in Luke's presence, and he found himself thinking about her when she wasn't around. Though neither dared to name it yet, there was an unmistakable warmth in their interactions, a spark that hinted at the possibility of something deeper. The foundation of their bond was honesty, simple yet profound, and it set the stage for love that was slowly, but surely, beginning to take root. A few days after their friendship had begun to blossom, a sudden storm swept across Cedar Creek. Dark clouds rolled over the horizon, and heavy rain began to pound the dusty streets, turning them into slick, muddy trails. Clara found herself trapped in the general store as the storm intensified, unsure whether she should brave the elements to make it home. The wind rattled the windows, and the store felt unusually small and isolating. She hugged herself, feeling a shiver of unease. Normally, she would have simply endured the storm in silence. But today, there was an unspoken wish for someone to check on her to ensure she wasn't entirely alone. Luke, meanwhile, had noticed the storm brewing as he rode through the outskirts of town. His instincts told him to head toward the general store, though he wasn't sure why. Perhaps it was a sense of responsibility, or perhaps it was the growing attachment he felt toward Clara. As the rain poured down in sheets, he spurred his horse through the slick streets, determined to reach her. When he arrived, he found Clara peering nervously through the window. startled but relieved to see him. Without a word, he ushered her out of the rain and into the relative warmth of the stable, where he had brought his horse. His calm, steady presence immediately eased her tension, and Clara realized just how much his arrival meant to her. Later, they retreated to the back of the store, where a small fireplace crackled, providing warmth and light. Drenched and shivering, Clara sank into a chair while Luke draped a coat over her shoulders. They shared quiet conversation, punctuated by the rhythmic sound of rain against the roof. In the comfort of that intimate space, Clara noticed Luke's attentive gaze, his steady calm, and the way he seemed genuinely concerned for her well-being. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel safe and seen in a way that transcended mere friendship. The storm outside mirrored the storm of emotions she felt inside, a mixture of fear, excitement, and burgeoning affection. Luke, too, felt something shift within him. He admired her courage in facing the storm, her resilience in the face of life's hardships, and the quiet dignity she carried even in her vulnerability. That night, as the rain slowed and the storm passed, both Clara and Luke understood that something unspoken had begun to grow between them, a bond built on trust, protection, and the first tender stirrings of love. The storm had brought more than rain, it had brought them closer, planting the seeds of a connection that promised to deepen with time. A few days after the storm, Luke invited Clara to accompany him to his ranch to help round up some stray cattle. At first, Clara hesitated, unsure if she was capable of handling the rough work or being outdoors for so long. Luke, noticing her apprehension, reassured her with a teasing grin. "Don't worry, you'll do fine. Just follow my lead." She couldn't help but laugh at his confidence, and that small smile was enough to ease her nerves. As they rode across the open plains, the vastness of the landscape contrasted sharply with the small, confined world Clara had grown accustomed to in Cedar Creek. The wind whipped through her hair, the scent of grass and earth filled her lungs, and for the first time in a long while, she felt alive in a way that went beyond routine. Luke worked with patience, showing her how to guide the cattle without startling them, offering gentle corrections and encouraging words. Clara found herself learning quickly, her confidence growing with each successful attempt. She began to see herself not as plain or unremarkable, but capable and resilient. Luke's presence was both grounding and exhilarating. He made her feel safe, yet challenged her to step beyond the boundaries she had placed on herself. Their interactions were filled with quiet laughter, shared effort, and subtle glances that lingered a little too long to be purely accidental. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Clara and Luke paused to rest. Sitting side by side on a fallen log, their hands brushed accidentally. Neither pulled away. Instead, a charged silence hung between them, filled with unspoken feelings and a mutual understanding that something deeper was stirring. Luke, with his easy confidence, softened by genuine admiration, complimented her on her courage and quick learning. Clara, feeling a warmth she had never felt before, realized that this simple, shared experience had shifted something fundamental in her heart. By the time they returned to the ranch house, the bond between them had grown stronger. It was no longer just friendship. It was the subtle beginnings of love, rooted in respect, trust, and the quiet thrill of discovery. That day on the plains had shown Clara that being ordinary didn't diminish her value, and it had shown Luke that honesty, courage, and authenticity could inspire a connection more profound than any superficial attraction. Their hearts had begun to intertwine, and both felt the undeniable pull toward something neither had expected, yet both were quietly yearning for. As Clara and Luke's bond grew stronger, the quiet bliss of their budding relationship was soon tested. Rumors began to circulate around Cedar Creek about Luke's past stories of disputes over cattle, a failed partnership, and misunderstandings with townsfolk that painted him in a rough, sometimes reckless light. Though most were exaggerated, the whispers reached Clara's ears, and her insecurities, long buried beneath her calm exterior, resurfaced with full force. She began to question whether someone like Luke, strong, independent, and worldly, could genuinely care for someone like her, someone plain and quiet with little to offer beyond honesty. The timing of these doubts couldn't have been worse. A small misunderstanding arose between them when Clara misinterpreted a casual comment Luke made about the town gossip, believing he saw her as naive or easily influenced. Hurt and unsure, she withdrew, burying herself in her work at the general store and avoiding Luke whenever possible. Luke, for his part, noticed her sudden distance, but was puzzled, thinking he had done nothing to offend her. His pride and his own insecurities made him hesitant to confront her directly, and instead, he gave her space while wrestling with his own feelings of frustration and longing. Days passed in awkward silence, and both Clara and Luke felt the absence keenly. Clara missed the easy companionship they had shared, the laughter, the quiet understanding, the moments of gentle teasing. Luke missed her presence more than he cared to admit, realizing that his admiration for her had grown into something deeper, something that required honesty, courage, and vulnerability. Despite the distance, neither could ignore the pull they felt toward one another. Eventually, the tension reached a tipping point. Luke decided he couldn't stand the uncertainty any longer and rode to the general store to confront the situation head-on. Seeing her there, quietly arranging jars as if nothing had changed, he realized how much he valued her, not her appearance, not her status, but her heart, her honesty, and her courage in the face of self-doubt. Clara, sensing his determination and the sincerity in his eyes, began to understand that misunderstandings and outside opinions could not diminish the bond they were building. This period of tension, though painful, became a turning point. Both Clara and Luke recognized that the foundation of their relationship, honesty, respect, and genuine care, was strong enough to weather challenges. Their hearts had been tested, and the longing and worry they felt during the silence revealed just how deeply they had begun to care for each other. After several tense days of distance, Luke could no longer ignore the gnawing emptiness he felt without Clara's presence. Each passing moment only reinforced the truth he had long tried to avoid admitting: he cared for her more deeply than he ever had for anyone. Her quiet strength, honesty, and resilience had captured his attention from the very first meeting, and now he understood that what he felt was more than friendship. It was love, a steady, undeniable pull that demanded acknowledgement. Determined to bridge the gap, he rode into town with purpose, refusing to let fear or pride stand in the way. When Luke arrived at the general store, Clara was at the counter, her hands busy with daily tasks, yet her expression distant, guarded. She had tried to bury her worries, to convince herself that his presence wasn't essential, but each moment apart had only made her heart ache. As Luke entered, she felt a mix of anticipation and apprehension, unsure whether he would leave her alone or speak the words she had secretly longed to hear. Luke approached with calm certainty, stopping just short of the counter. His gaze met hers, steady and unwavering, and Clara felt the weight of his sincerity. He spoke softly but firmly, explaining that the rumors and misunderstandings of the past were irrelevant to him. What mattered, he said, was her honesty, her courage, and the depth of her heart. Luke confessed that he had come to care for her in ways that could not be ignored, that she had become indispensable to him, and that he wanted to be part of her life in every sense. Clara's heart raced as the walls she had built around herself began to crumble. She realized that the insecurities and doubts that had plagued her were unnecessary. Luke saw her truth, the very essence of who she was, and cherished it. Overwhelmed by emotion, she admitted that she felt the same way, that she had come to trust, admire, and love him in return. The words, once unspoken, now filled the room, replacing tension with relief, doubt with certainty, and fear with hope. That day marked a turning point in their relationship. They were no longer two individuals cautiously navigating friendship. They had become partners in every sense, bound by mutual respect, trust, and burgeoning love. Luke's confession and Clara's response solidified a connection built not on appearances or pretense, but on honesty, a love that promised to endure, strong enough to face whatever challenges the frontier and life might present. With their feelings finally confessed, Clara and Luke began to explore the full depth of their relationship. The early uncertainty had passed, replaced by a tender familiarity and a growing sense of partnership. Life on the frontier was rarely easy, but together, they discovered a rhythm that brought joy and stability into their days. Luke introduced Clara to the routines of ranch life, tending to the horses, mending fences, and guiding cattle across the sprawling plains. At first, Clara had worried that she would falter under the physical demands, but Luke's patient guidance and steady encouragement allowed her to learn quickly. Each small success brought a surge of pride and confidence, and Luke's admiration for her determination deepened with every accomplishment. Evenings became their most cherished time. After long days of work, they would sit together by the fire, sharing stories, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. The intimacy between them was subtle, yet profound, the way their hands brushed as they passed tools, the shared smiles over inside jokes, and the gentle teasing that reminded them both of their playful sides. Clara discovered that love didn't need grand gestures or declarations. It could grow in the quiet, unassuming moments, strengthened by respect, trust, and mutual care. Their connection also proved resilient when unexpected challenges arose. Storms, difficult neighbors, and the hardships of frontier life tested their patience and resolve. Yet each obstacle brought them closer, reinforcing the trust and reliance they had built. Luke found himself constantly attentive to Clara's well-being, not out of obligation but from genuine love. Clara, in turn, felt empowered to assert herself, knowing that her opinions and insights mattered deeply to him. As their love grew, Clara began to shed the insecurities that had haunted her for so long. Luke's consistent acceptance and admiration helped her see herself as capable, worthy, and cherished. The woman who once whispered, "I'm not lovely," now stood with quiet confidence, knowing that her value extended far beyond appearances. By the time the sun dipped behind the horizon on many long days, Clara and Luke's bond had evolved into a partnership, built on shared experiences, unwavering support, and a love that was as enduring as the land they worked together. Their hearts were no longer tentative or cautious. They were aligned, beating in unison with a trust and affection that promised a lifetime of companionship. In each other, they had found not just love, but a true partner in life, someone to face both the hardships and the joys of the frontier together. As time passed, the bond between Clara and Luke grew stronger, rooted in trust, honesty, and shared experiences. Life on the frontier remained challenging, with unpredictable weather, demanding work, and occasional tensions with neighbors. Yet, through it all, their love deepened, strengthened by the quiet understanding that they could rely on one another in every circumstance. Every sunset, every evening spent tending fires or riding across the plains, reinforced the unspoken promise that they would face life's hardships side by side. One golden evening, as the sun dipped low behind the rolling hills, Luke led Clara to a favorite spot on the ranch, a quiet clearing overlooking the wide expanse of prairie. The sky glowed in hues of amber and rose, and the gentle rustling of grass in the breeze seemed to echo the steady beat of their hearts. Luke had been planning this moment, wanting it to be perfect in its simplicity, reflective of the honest, grounded love they had nurtured together. Turning to Clara, he took her hands in his, feeling the warmth and strength that had captivated him from the beginning. He spoke softly, recounting the journey they had shared, the storm that brought them together, the quiet moments that built trust, the challenges that tested their resolve, and the laughter and love that had grown between them. Then, with an earnest gaze, he knelt on one knee, producing a simple but elegant ring symbolic, not of wealth or status, but of commitment, honesty, and devotion. "Clara," he said, his voice steady yet full of emotion, "I don't care about appearances or fancy gestures. What matters to me is your heart, your courage, and your honesty. Will you spend the rest of your life with me?" Clara's eyes filled with tears of joy as she realized that the insecurities she had carried for so long were meaningless in the face of Luke's unwavering love. She had never imagined someone could see her so completely, value her so deeply, and cherish her just as she was. With a smile that reflected relief, happiness, and love, she whispered her answer. "Yes." Luke slipped the ring onto her finger, and they embraced, a sense of profound contentment settling over them. The frontier stretched out before them, vast and unpredictable, yet they knew they would face it together. In the simplicity of that moment, they understood the true meaning of love built on honesty, trust, and the courage to see and accept one another fully. Their journey, once uncertain and tentative, had blossomed into a lasting partnership, a love strong enough to endure whatever lay ahead.